what is waiting for me when I do this growing, when I embrace this letting go and actually, yes, embrace this loss. What am I going to be given instead? Because that's the thing, you guys, 99% of the time in life, when we lose something, we gain something else. Welcome to the Shannon McCabe Show, where we break free from our drink-obsessed culture, challenge the myths around alcohol, and redefine sobriety as the empowering choice it truly is. I'm Shannon McCabe, sober coach, holistic nutritionist, and your guide to a life that feels better without booze. Whether you're newly sober, sober curious, or years into this journey, this podcast is here to give you the truth about alcohol, the tools to build lasting confidence, and the hope that a vibrant, fulfilling life is waiting for you on the other side. So grab your coffee or sparkling water and let's dive in. What I thought I would just kind of riff on today, well, there's actually two things on my mind, but what I think is more appropriate for this conversation, or more appropriate for this phase of the journey, which is really building the foundation of your sober life, right? And so really sink into that, you guys, because it was very intentional, even down to what I named this program. When you think of a blueprint, it is basically your map to building something big and strong that you hope to inhabit and that you hope will last for a very long time, right? When we think of like a blueprint to a house or any building, it's very detailed, meticulous instructions so that the finished product comes out as a stable, but yet cozy and beautiful, livable thing that will bring you joy and will bring you safety and security and happiness and all the things that we want from anything that we build, right? So as we're working our way through the blueprint, something that comes up is a lot of us just kind of forget how often in life that growth, any kind of growth, obviously here in this container, this growth is about letting go of alcohol and figuring out who and what we are without it. But you guys, we go through these seasons of growth so often in our life. So today's conversation is an invitation for you to think back to other times in your life where you have either chosen to grow or have been forced, maybe at first forced to grow, not because you wanted to, but maybe because it was just time to. And how often when that happens, we get stuck on the loss that we first experience when growth is happening, because that's the reality of it, is that oftentimes growth looks a lot like loss in the beginning. And it can be loss of a lot of things, right? Loss of what we've known up to this point, loss of what feels familiar, what feels reliable, what feels steady. Also, like a loss of a sense of control, because when we're growing and we're shifting our attention to something new and something unknown, we often don't feel as in control as we have in the past because it's uncertain. But I invite you to remember and to sink in and to kind of open your mind right now to the idea that growth and loss go hand in hand. And that we don't have to be afraid of loss. We don't have to fear loss. And we don't have to fight it and try to keep stuffing it back in and keep it from happening. Because usually what happens when we do that is all of the really hard, uncomfortable, painful parts of loss, we actually just make them last longer. We make them feel much worse and much more intense than they need to otherwise. A really easy analogy is, you guys, you think about, a simple but magnificent thing, like what happens to a caterpillar when it's becoming a butterfly, right? It's a major transformation that has to happen. And the caterpillar innately does not understand what it's going to be on the other side of this urge that it's feeling to go into its chrysalis, to cocoon, to kind of for a moment get still, get small, and almost contract in, but it has to happen. Something inside of it is telling it that it has to do this thing. It has to build this chrysalis and to kind of wall itself off and focus just on it for a while. And then we know what's coming on the other side of it. It's going to be this beautiful butterfly that is going to have capabilities it didn't have before, that's going to get to experience the world in a new, and some would say better way. But the caterpillar doesn't know that at the time. It just has to trust this process that it's being called to do. It has to surrender to what is happening. You guys, that's not any different than what's going on here. Okay, right? For whatever reasons, we all have a lot of big different reasons, but when we distill them down, they're basically the same. For whatever reason, we know that we cannot keep going with drinking the way that we have been up to this point. We know that our relationship with alcohol cannot keep existing the way that it has. So we're here to change that. But a lot of times we fight the growth because we get stuck on what we think we're losing. And we get stuck on the pain and the drama and the uncertainty of what we think we're losing and what we think we're letting go of. So much so to the point that we often forget to even ask ourselves, but what might be waiting for me on the other side of this? What is waiting for me when I do this growing? When I embrace this letting go and actually, yes, embrace this loss, what am I going to be given instead? Because that's the thing, you guys, 99% of the time in life, when we lose something, we gain something else. And maybe not immediately and maybe not right away, but we often do. We gain other things. And sometimes with enough time and perspective, we can see that those other things are a huge blessing, are something that we come to find so much joy and love and celebration in a lot of different ways. But during the growth process, if we just continue to fixate on what we're losing and how things used to be, we're choosing to put blinders up to what will be down the road, what will exist on the other side of that loss. So it's this middle space, this like in between, especially in this journey that we're talking about here, especially in the quitting drinking, the letting go of alcohol, this like middle ground, this middle space, which is very temporary, but also very emotionally charged. This middle space where the old us is basically gone or is leaving because we know we can't exist that way anymore. But the new us, the real us, but this new version of us that is going to figure out how to do life without alcohol is not fully here yet. So we are stuck, we are in between these two things. And like I said, it's often very emotionally charged. It feels very unsteady and very uncertain and very raw and very real. This is usually where people panic. This is where people usually give into all of the fears and give into all of the voices that tell us this is too hard. It should not feel this way. We don't have what it takes to make it through this. So we should just go back. Even though we know that going back is not actually good for us. It's not going to solve anything. It's not going to make us happy. The only plus is that it's familiar. It's familiar. So even if it was misery, even if it was hell, it's a familiar hell. A lot of people will panic in the middle of growth and go back and choose that unfamiliar hell simply because they aren't willing to surrender and trust that what is coming could be just as good, if not actually better, than anything that we perceive we're losing in the growth process. I'd love to hear how that lands, how that does it trigger you? Does it resonate? Does it land? Because another thing about this in between, this stage, this growth process, you guys, is again, especially in the early quitting drinking journey, in this phase, it's human nature to want to rush it. You want this to be something that's precisely manageable, and you want to know exactly how long this is going to take. You want to know exactly what to do. And you want to be able to circle a day on the calendar when you're going to wake up and suddenly be like, awesome, I'm excited that I don't drink. I'm full of the freedom and peace and ease that Shannon's always talking about. I am going to know how to perfectly answer every single question that people have about why I quit drinking or how I feel. Don't I miss it? Am I really never going to drink again? All of that stuff. But you guys, when you try to like strangle the how of this middle stage, that's when the ease and the peace and the freedom, like you're blocking it. That is actually literally how you block it. It's not up to you to decide exactly when this lands for you or exactly how it lands for you. You just have to over and over continually, one day at a time. That's why we talk about showing up and doing the things one day at a time. That is how we surrender and trust and believe and continue one day at a time in faith that the things that we want are out there, and they absolutely are for you. There's no reason that you won't get the peace and the ease and the ease and the freedom and the confidence and everything that you want. There's no reason that those things will not happen for you. But it likely is not going to show up in exactly the way you think it is or exactly when you think it is. We have to be willing to just surrender to the process and trust. And remember that growth usually does not feel great. You guys, growing pains, it is a term for a reason. It is a very real thing, physically and emotionally, right? Most of us had the growing pains when we were kids, when we were physically growing, and we got those aches and pains. You guys, growing pains are an emotional, spiritual thing too. The more we fight them, the more we stay stuck in the painful part. Surrendering to the process, surrendering to the work being taking in the new information, peeling back the layers of your life. Why do you drink? Why do you think you need to drink? What can you do instead? How do you want to feel? What are the habits that are going to help you feel the way you want to feel? Any and all of those habits that aren't alcohol, because we are leaving alcohol in the past. Surrendering to all of that, trusting all of that. That is the antidote to the growing pains of this journey. When it feels like this pain is unbearable, and when it feels like everything is falling apart because you don't know, well, how are my friendships going to look if I quit drinking? How is my marriage going to look if I quit drinking? How am I going to function at work, happy hours, and corporate events if I quit drinking? How am I going to hang out with my family this summer? How am I going to celebrate Christmas Eve? How am I really going to never drink with my kid when they turn 21? All of this stuff, it feels like it's falling apart. But you guys, how many times do things have to fall apart before they actually are built back better? Things falling apart is usually actually things falling into place. But of course, we rarely see that except for in hindsight, right? Like looking back is 2020. When we get enough distance, when we get enough time, when we get enough perspective, that's when we can look back and be like, oh my God, it's so clear now. It had to feel like it was all falling apart for it to come back together to be the best version of my life for me. So when it feels like it is falling apart, when the growing pains are just so tough and so hard, and when you're like, I can't do it, I can't deal with my toddler screaming kids without pouring wine at 4 p.m. I can't handle the thought of the annual camping trip without Bloody Marys with everybody else. I can't handle the thought of a wedding or a funeral or all of this stuff. Life, the good and the bad and the ugly, life without alcohol, you guys. Figuring it out messy, figuring it out when it's hard, when it's painful, letting it fall apart is the only way for those pieces to come back together even better, for you to come back even better, for you to feel stronger and more capable and more at peace and more confident and more full of ease and more full of freedom. We don't just get those things. We build those things by doing the shit that we don't know how we're going to do. That's the secret. That's the secret right there. We never know exactly how long it's going to take, and we never know what we're going to have to do to get those things. We'll know it when we see it, because it's going to be the stuff that brings us to our knees, and it's going to be the stuff that makes us think, nope, no, this is where I tap out. This is where I give in and drink, because I have no fucking clue how I'm going to handle this fight with my husband, how I'm going to handle that weekend with my friends, how I'm going to do XYZ without alcohol. When we do those things without alcohol, that's how the pieces come back together. That's how the growing pains get less severe. That's how the mess begins to become less messy. That's it. That's the secret. The secret is just trusting the process. It's surrendering to the process. It's believing in the process, believing in the journey, believing in yourself, continuing to just do like the next right thing, even when you have no idea what the long game is or how everything's going to work out down the road. You pull yourself back in and like, just what is the next right thing? What is the next best step in any moment for you to stay true to what you've said you want to do, which is not drink, which is figure out life without this shitty, toxic, mind-altering, addictive drug. What is just the next thing that you can do to keep moving forward? And you just do that. You remind yourself that growing pains don't last forever. Messy things don't last forever. Hindsight can only be 20/20 if we allow ourselves to wade through the mud until we get out of it, and then have the luxury, the prize of hindsight, so we can look back and be like, oh, now I see. Now I see why it had to go that way. And then that's how we get the things that we want. That's how we land in a place where all of a sudden we're like, I feel better about myself than I felt in years, or than maybe I ever have before. That's how we gain wisdom. That's how we gain experience. That's how it trickles out into every other area of our life, is by just like managing our expectations and showing up when we don't know really how to do it, but we've committed to doing it. So just keep seeing that commitment through. Keep doing what you said you were going to do and trust that it's going to work out. Surrender to the process. Have faith. It's like that. There's a saying. Well, I know I hear this in the sober world a lot, and it's really actually super true. When people, usually in the beginning or in some of these messy beginning parts, are like, I thought it would be easier now. When does it get good? And the saying is, if it's not good yet, keep going. Like, that means you're not there yet. And it's 100% true. Like, if you find yourself having to ask, like, when does it get good? Well, not yet. So keep going and keep doing the things. You keep doing the work. You keep asking for the support. You keep asking for the guidance. You keep learning. You keep being willing to learn new things, to try new things, to shed some old beliefs and adopt some new beliefs. And you keep going. And sooner or later, you will have this moment where you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. Yep, I get it. Now I get it. And that moment is different for all of us. You guys have that in here. We talk about that in a couple of lessons. We talk about it when we're talking about emotional sobriety. We talk about it when we talk about emotion-based goals versus time-based goals. Because we're all different beings and we're all going to have a different experience. Some people get to the good part on like week 4. Some people don't get to the good part for 5 years because they resist the mess. They resist the growing pains. They resist learning. They fight whatever feels hard and uncomfortable, which, like I've said, spoiler alert, only prolongs what feels hard and uncomfortable. The only way through is through. If something feels like it's in the way of your success or your happiness, that thing usually is the way. That is what you need to figure out. That is what you need to work on. That is what you need to attempt to master. All right. You guys, that was a lot. That was a riff. That was kind of a riff that came from some conversations I'm having. I would love to hear how that lands for you guys, though. Any takeaways, any aha moments, or if it triggered you. Because you guys, that's the thing too. That's actually like a perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about. If we hear something, especially in this work, especially in this sober surrendering journey, if something really, really triggers you, it's an invitation to lean in, because it usually means that there is work that needs to be done. And it's usually work that we've been avoiding for a really long time, and probably avoiding by drinking alcohol. And so now that we've taken alcohol out of it, we got to usually face that stuff. That's it for today's episode. If this conversation resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new episode. And if you're loving the show, I'd be so grateful if you'd leave a quick review. It helps others find this message and start their own journey to freedom. Until next time, keep choosing yourself, keep believing in what's possible, and remember, you are so much stronger than you think.